This is the Flabbergasted Podcast, where we just can't believe you haven't seen it. Every episode, we discuss a movie that one of us has seen and the other hasn't. Follow us on Instagram at FlabberPod and subscribe in your podcast app of choice. I'm your host, Rogge. Let's get to it. Today, we are discussing Django Unchained. Django Unchained is a 2012 film directed by Quentin Tarantino, starring Christoph Waltz and Jamie Foxx and Leonardo DiCaprio. It's a Western drama, or drama Western, I guess, per IMDb. With the help of a German bounty hunter, a freed slave sets out to rescue his wife from a brutal plantation owner in Mississippi. Django Unchained, one of my favorite films. Jess, you had not seen Django Unchained to this point.
I had not seen it. I had seen previews for it, or I had seen previews for it when it came out. Mm-hmm. And am I crazy, or was there like talk about it getting awards potentially? Or there was just talk about it? Could have been that too. We're
going to set our fact-checking team to look up the number of Academy Award or Golden Globe nominations received or nominated for Django Unchained. I could not tell you. I was a sophomore in college at the time. It was not locked into award season. So, do you have history with other Tarantino films?
Pulp Fiction.
Obvi.
Kill Bill.
Volumes 1 and 2.
1 and 2. And I really just love those, but I really like Uma Thurman too. So
and Feet.
I really liked that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, MTV Movie Awards. Wait, what am I looking at? Christoph Waltz. These are wins or nominations? I don't know if it was a win. Okay, see, this isn't helpful. I know what the award is. Thank you, Jeremy. It was just nominated. Christoph Waltz was nominated for supporting. Yeah, I guess supporting would be appropriate. Spoiler alert, I thought he was excellent.
Yes, agree.
It was so good. Man, he kept up that German accent so well.
I have no words. He was really good. I do have some things that I like that he did, but...
That was just a joke about how he's already just German. That's just his voice. So you did not see it at the time, didn't catch your interest.
And I probably would have just never seen it had you not brought it up.
Wow.
We're probably going to have a lot of those, I think.
It's almost like that's the entire conceit of the film. This is a movie I wouldn't have seen if you hadn't told me to do it because of a podcast. I saw it in 2012, probably late 2012 with Rachel. She and I watched it on a laptop on the front porch of one of our friends' houses, if I recall correctly.
Aww.
It's a cute little movie date. Well, because we watched the Harry Potter films and the Star Wars films together, so we're watching movies together. It was kind of one of the things we did.
Did Rachel like it?
Yeah, she's always liked it. Mm-hmm.
So how did this become your date movie?
It's a good question. I don't know if it is that we had already watched Inglourious Bastards and we're like, Tarantino. I don't remember that being the case. It just came out. Maybe it might have just been on Redbox and we're at Walgreens or whatever because we're college students and that's how we're renting films. And I said, Jamie Foxx, I recognize him from the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies or whatever. Movie. Just the one I guess he's in. Not that I've seen those. Could be a good future callback. So yeah, since then, I've just really liked Django, and I've made a point of going back and watching more Tarantino films. I just saw Pulp Fiction last year for the first time, and went back and saw Kill Bill. We were sure to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood when it was nominated for Best Picture.
We haven't seen that one yet either. Okay. And by we, I mean Jeremy and I, not me, in plural.
The royal we.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we should just kind of jump into it here. I even have a couple of notes from the opening credits. I have a lot of notes for Django Unchained. I've watched it twice in the run up to this podcast. I really enjoyed it, even though it's 2 hours and 45 minutes long. Our longest film to date in Flabbergasted history. Setting a new record for length. I haven't even written all the other ones down, but I'm just assuming.
I'm sure you're correct.
My first thought is this, and you tell me if this strikes you as similarly interesting. I'm watching Jamie Foxx walking through the like Texas winter countryside, chained up as a slave. I'm thinking, man, as a famous, I mean, after the Ray Charles movie, would you say A-list, B plus list? I mean, he's a big actor, right? Jamie Foxx. As a black man with that kind of acting resume, do you feel pressure to do a slavery movie at some point? Is it something that, I mean, I'm just think of the decision-making process where he's like, no, you know what? I'm going to do this, like a shirt off, whip marks, like R on my cheek. Like I'm going to do a slavery movie, because that's not an option for lots of other actors, obviously. You know, I wonder if one feels pressure choosing that kind of role. Did you think any of those things?
No, I didn't think that, but I thought, oh my God, I could never do that.
Yeah.
Like
the acting.
I'm just talking about literally walking through barefoot, chained to somebody in the cold, the yuckiness. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know, I do not have the physical or mental strength to handle what
you just sit down and then they whip you.
Yeah.
So then what?
Yeah. And the constant like berating and just, that's what I thought when I saw it. I literally wrote that down. Like, just, there's no way. Like, I don't know how people, there's just a toughness that is displayed in that scene. Mm-hmm. Not that they should have had to, he and the four other guys or whatever. Yeah. Like that should not be something you experience, but they did. And
the resiliency.
That's the word.
For sure. Yeah. My similar note was slavery is the worst.
Yes.
I think it's the explicitly stated stance of Flabbergasted and podcast and Mara Media in general that chattel slavery was atrocity and one of the worst things that I can imagine.
Agree.
And I think this movie does a good job of telling a story that isn't explicitly just slavery is the worst. I mean, that theme comes back a lot, but there's also the Broomhilda saga sort of thing they talk about, and the love story aspects, and there's comedy in there as well. So it does a good job doing that without pulling punches about, there's no
how horrible it was.
Yeah, not shying away from that aspect. Even if some of it, things may be exaggerated to some extent, but I don't think a lot of it is. I mean, some of the outfits that they're making them wear, like you're seeing them in town with those big like antler things on to make just their lives worse and less comfortable and harder to, slavery is the worst. The entire first scene, that we're already kind of talking about, where Christoph Waltz comes up and ends up buying Django from the Speck brothers. You're like, okay, this is what this guy does. He comes in, he talks fast, he shoots first, asks questions later. Like
he's a very likable character.
He's very likable. That's so true. I didn't even consider that. You at no point are like, am I on this guy's team or these white slavers team? Like, I don't, who am I supposed to be siding with here? He's intelligent and like formal, polite, but also has a early on demonstrated moral compass that, in 2023 we can get behind, right? He's against slavery for sure.
But he also doesn't have problems killing people, which...
Yeah, bad people.
I'm cool with that kind of.
It's kind of like for
a movie. Like I'm not advocating people killing people, let me just say.
Yeah, but I liken it to the thing where it's like punch Nazis. Like I think punching Nazis is good. That's what we should do to a Nazi if we find one, is punch them. That was kind of a thing a few years ago, right? Is when they were doing the white nationalist thing out on the streets and someone would just come up in a hood and just deck whatever those guys' names are. They don't even need us to
acknowledge.
Be giving them any free advertisement.
Okay, I do have a note about that scene.
Please.
And first of all, I've seen a lot of Westerns because my grandma loved them. My dad enjoys them. And going back even further, the credits were totally right on the money as far as like a Western.
I have seen very few Westerns, unless you count like the Star Wars movies.
I do not count those.
Okay, but
good effort.
They are though, right?
Are they?
Yeah, they're like based on the Japanese,
Wait,
like Kurosawa.
How are we defining Western?
Oh, it's the vibe. It's not just about the setting.
Okay, well, I'm
talking. Is there a cowboy hat? Yes or no? Like that's not.
I'm talking about, that's what I'm talking about. So I'll stretch you Star Wars if we go Western sci-fi.
Some of them
ish.
There's a lot of sand. You told me it's not a desert?
Is there sand? Yes, Western.
Well, you at least have to check that box. Like it's on the list.
But, okay, so a lot of Westerns, credits totally on par. However, I have never seen, and, maybe I haven't seen as many as somebody else. I have never seen a tooth on top of a wagon to symbolize a dentist. And I got to tell you, what we were saying, that spring looked really shiny in the dark, but then the next day, not so shiny. But anyways, the whole tooth on top of the wagon was hilarious. I loved that.
So bouncy. Like it never stops and just rests. Like it's constantly jiggling.
Yes. And I think it adds to his underestimate said person.
Yes.
You underestimate him and then he comes out on top because you've underestimated him. So I think it totally adds to his character. And then the other note that I have at the very beginning is I literally wrote, not a fan of shooting the head off the horse. Like
where he has to, he takes out the horse so that it lands on the guy. Right.
In theory, very clever. Not a fan of it, generally speaking, though.
Sure. And I think, he's not running around doing that all the time, right? There's a respect for the horses and for animals that I think is a clear through line, is demonstrated.
Yes.
All right. So it's not like that's not representative of who this guy is.
Yeah. And I did like that. And I like how he told Django to get on the horse, take the guy's jacket. Like, let's go. Yeah. We're together now.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. I appreciated that he responded. I didn't get the feeling that he was condescending. Ever in his conversation with actually pretty much anybody. But
yeah, until the very end.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Until the very end. Yeah. Agree.
Yeah. You can see his desire to survive and earn money for most of the time is overriding his strict moral duty sense. Not that he's acting amorally necessarily, but he's not exactly a crusader for justice, in and of itself. And then later on the lines start to, it tips in the direction of where he's like, this would be worth it. It's worth it for me to sacrifice my life here. Yeah. I had a couple more notes from that first scene, going along with shooting the horse. I thought that Fritz, every time he says, and my horse Fritz, and he bows.
Oh,
right?
I love that.
It's so
I wrote
cute.
That too. Yes. Love the intro of the horse.
Fritz making an early push for best performance, right? Of the picture. Cause he does it every time. And people are always like, oh, that's so cute. And all that stuff. And
it's the unassuming thing again. They're like, oh,
yeah. Yes. He catches them off guard, right? You're endearing yourself.
Because you're so sweet with your charming horse.
I think even in some of those montages where they're tromping through the snow and stuff, I'm always like, man, those horses are killing it. Doing such a good job. That horse is a great actor. There's a couple of slow-mo shots there in that first scene where whenever the guys, the slaves, after they get unhooked, are throwing off their blankets that are behind them and you see the scars and it slows down and it's just an epic kind of reverse superhero sort of thing almost. And I just love it. It's just so good.
They did that a lot in the film, multiple times throughout. And I really liked, it was hey, look at this. This is important. We want you to notice it. But I feel like every time they did it, it was worth it, I think. It wasn't overused or underused, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're not, I think it does a good job of not having, you're not supposed to necessarily just sympathize, oh, look at these poor guys, and how hard of a time, but lifting them up as if they were given the opportunity, how great of, things they could have accomplished, and just emphasizing, their humanity, I think. And so these are superheroes that just got unchained. You don't know, what you're getting into, white guys.
Yeah.
And so you'd seen Tarantino films before, so you weren't totally caught off guard by the way the way they shoot his body and it explodes 15 feet in the air.
No, that didn't bother me as much as the fighting later on in the movie.
The Mandingo fighting?
Yeah, and that absolutely. I couldn't watch.
Absolutely. That is the most disturbing scene. up there for me with the dog tearing him apart scene.
Yeah.
Those are so much more realistic. I think it would be hard to explain to someone that had never seen a film like this. Like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of gunshots, guys' heads getting blown off, walls painted in blood. And those scenes aren't affecting at all compared to the gritty realism of two men being forced to punch each other to death.
And I think that's what it is, because as I'm watching this movie, I don't care if they kill that guy, but I do care that two people are being forced to fight each other against their will. And I do care that dogs are being allowed to rip into somebody because somebody told them to, and somebody's suffering for it. Yeah. So like, I guess the difference is I empathize in the other situations, and I don't really empathize with the guy getting killed, because I'm like, dude, you made bad choices. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can probably take that farther when you realize that the buckets of blood, like explosion shots, are always white people getting shot, versus it's when the slaves or the black characters are being killed, it's so much more visceral and more human.
Oh yeah, more human. That's a good way to put it.
I also, as we transition out of that first scene into sort of the first act of the movie, where they're going around and being bounty hunters and we're learning about the setup for the final story, it always strikes me that Django does very little questioning of Christoph Waltz. He's just told to, okay, we're going to go in here, we're going to sit down, we're going to drink a beer. And, Christoph Waltz is threatening guys, and they're running around, and they're always getting guns pointed at him. And Django's like, yeah, I guess, this is what I'm doing. Like, this is a classic Tuesday. He's someone that has been trained to unquestioningly obey, a slave with a master, right? It's not that different for him to just go along with whatever's happening. He doesn't seem shocked. And then more and more, as he gains his own agency, like even the sentences he used in the very beginning, where it's just so simple and short and curt, versus like the way he's able to give speeches and stuff by the end, is a really cool progression.
I think that's because he's empowered to do it too.
Yeah.
But so that first scene, I literally wrote down, like, I'm going to mess it up, but I said, why did he get the sheriff and not the marshal?
Yeah.
And then that question was answered, which I thought was really fun. Because the sheriff, if I got that right, it's the sheriff, and because there was a bounty out for the sheriff. Yep, so
sheriff first, and then he's like, and now you may get the marshal.
Yes, I really thought that was fun.
Yeah.
Which also, by the way, just brings up this whole Wild West thing, as in, how do you actually know that that's the person that he said he was?
Right.
And like, identity theft could literally be a thing super easily. There's not really any way to, not that it's like super not common now, but your word is, that's it. That's all anybody has, really. And these pictures that are drawn of you that might not even actually look like you, like, how do you even know?
You grow a beard and you're good to go. Yeah, I wonder if the burden of proof is almost lower in those kind of bounty hunter situations. Like, if you can at least demonstrate, I had 3 people tell me, word of mouth, like, this is who that is. The judge has to be like, hey, that was reasonable then. Like, you did all you could,
And then the whole mob idea, like, there's a mob mentality. So just because one person says that's who that is, if you can convince 2 other people that that's who that is, they say it unflinchingly and with such conviction, then now there's 3 people that can back you up, and they don't actually, they're all still stemming off one person's word, I guess is what I'm saying. So it's like, that blows my mind kind of. And it just blows my mind because it's dangerous.
Yeah, you're first of all saying that bounty hunting is fine, right? Dead or alive. You put dead. It's not this much dead, but this much alive, but less dead. It's just like, dead or alive. So you're implicitly condoning that they're going to go do this. And like you're saying, how are you really sure that's who it is? I think this is interrogated a little bit in the kind of second to last setting, when they're going to the mining company, all of that stuff. And he's like, the Smith Call gang. And like, we all know the Smith Call gang was already taken care of, right? But he's convincing these guys, they're back there. And they're like, okay, sure. Like, they totally believe him. Like,
which was so clever.
Yeah.
So clever.
Yeah. But that just goes to show, like, we've kind of been suspension of disbelief, like, oh, he and Christoph Waltz are so good at this, and they actually are following all the rules. They do make sure it's the right person. They do have the warrants and stuff like that. And then when he starts doing that to be able to get out of that situation, you're like, oh yeah, this is all kind of hanging by a thread. Like how much sense any of this actually makes for the whole idea of bounty hunting. Yeah, in a time before driver's licenses, I guess.
So I do have my first complaint.
Great.
Actually, my second complaint, because I didn't like the shooting the head off the horse. But I'm a little disappointed because when he's picking out his costume to go get the brothers, I can't remember what kind of brothers.
Brittle.
The Brittle brothers. He's like, this is your character, and you can pick any costume in here. And I'm like, what the heck? This is the perfect time for a montage of different outfits. Like, why are we not doing that?
If that's, I mean, I guess that's just a vibe choice. Like, if you want to do the Pretty Woman thing and like, that's what we're doing, but would that have fit with, like, is that really what those two characters would have done in this setting, in this movie, you know?
I don't know, but there's other things they did that I wouldn't have thought they would have done necessarily. Like, I'm sure they could have made it work.
And they do, you know, he tries on that hat that sits on top of his afro and he's like, no, I don't know. Oh, it's not working for you. So that's about as close as we get. Yeah. That's fun. Your beef is an omission. I wanted more of this. Why didn't they could have shown me this thing that just happened in the off screen, you know?
Well, because I was literally sitting there while it happened. I'm like, oh, he's going to try on some different outfits and this is going to be fun for him because
he's never got to do that.
He's never got to do that.
He's like, you're going to let me pick out my own clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm reminded, because that would be, you know, that would be comedic, right? That would be why they'd be doing it, is to see him in suspenders and you know, just acting different ways. There are a lot of funny lines and funny sections and stuff.
Yeah.
I have kind of a list of them. I mean, that's what notes end up being. Those are the lines that stick out at you. So I take a lot of notes on those kinds of things. But when, you know, he shoots the sheriff and then goes, in other words, Marshal, you owe me $200. Like, you actually have to be thanking me for shooting this guy dead in the street. That's funny. When they get to that first plantation where the Brittle brothers are and the Big Daddy character is explaining to the slave, like, how to treat Django. It's like, treat him. She's like, oh, you want me to treat him like a white man? And Christoph Waltz starts nodding and Big Daddy goes, no, I didn't say that. You know, what's that boy in town?
I love that because it shows just how utterly absurd the whole idea is. And I mean, I probably shouldn't say I love that. That's what I enjoyed about that scene is like just hearing him say all of that stuff out loud. I'm like, you're such an idiot. This whole thing is ridiculous. But I mean, I knew that already, but seeing it is still annoying.
Yeah. There's a lot in this movie that has two layers to it, right? On the one hand, it's a pretty straightforward, strong emotional arc of, you know, a love story and being separated and, you know, very straightforward, like anti-racism, anti-slavery stuff. And then there's whole other levels of peeling back, like the ridiculousness of the strict hierarchical classification of like, well, you got your white man and then your white woman. And then you've got, you know, he called him the Peckerwood boy who works at the glass factory. So it's, you know, somebody who with a developmental delay or something like that. And then it's your, you know, exceptional black. And then there's the house and then the field and all the, like, the stratification. It's just like, this is so dumb. Like, how can you possibly be trying to justify this?
Yeah.
And then similarly, like when they're about to go meet Leo, Calvin Candy, and he's like, well, he loves the French. He wants to be called Monsieur Candy, but he doesn't speak French, and you can't speak in front of him.
You'll upset him.
He'll be offended. He'll get embarrassed. Like, it's just a dance that you're doing here. It's not actual intellectualism.
I really thought he was going to get in trouble for killing the Brittle brothers. I mean, I'm like, yes, get them, right? Because I appreciate that. And obviously they're horrible characters, but I really thought he was going to get in trouble. And I was a little worried that that's the route this was going to go. And then like other things were going to happen. So I'm glad that, I just forgot his name, King Schultz got there in time.
I've just been calling him Christoph Waltz. So.
Got there in time to like help.
Right.
make sure like he didn't get in trouble.
Yeah.
I appreciated
Even
that.
though he was like overkilling the body, like just kept shooting him. So it's like,
Yes.
obviously this is a little personal. I thought in that scene was when I realized that this movie does such a good job of making me feel the way it wants me to feel. Because it does the flashback to Django just begging them, do not whip her. Like you're going, like it's going to cause all this stuff and like whip me instead and all these things. And there's so many other things that are happening in this movie. And then that moment you're like, whipping someone is the worst. Like the crack noise that whip makes and how heavy it looks and just the welts on their backs. You know, it'd be easy to focus on some of the other atrocities necessarily, but each individual step of the way, you're like, oh, that is so awful. Like whipping a human. I cannot believe it. And then when Django gets the whip and you can just feel when he's like ripping into little Rogge, like you can feel why he would want to do that. And you're like, you're right there alongside with him. I mean, that's what a good movie does, I think, is puts you in that character, like empathizing with that character, if that's what it's trying to get you to do. And I was just impressed by that. Were you scared at any point, and not like literally scared for yourself, but like worried for Django and King during any of that clan scene stuff? Was there a point where you thought that the clansmen were going to get the upper hand, or?
No, I knew when they took the dynamite and put it in the tooth, I knew they were up to something. They were doing good. And also I remember going like, did they just take money out of there? What are they doing? So clever hiding spot.
Yeah.
Also very weird hiding spot, but whatever. And then they put the dynamite in there. And then I was like, this whole clan thing is just ridiculous.
Right.
Like it's ridiculous. And also like, forgive me, but I am just going to say it. It's just like, nope, never mind. I'm not going to say that. It's,
oh brother, where art thou?
No, no.
No.
It's just like alt-right. A group of white men to be ungrateful for somebody that cut out hoods for them.
Yeah.
Not that I think that that's an okay
gift, but
it's
a little
like
bit of gratitude.
Yeah, like, and the guy rides off, and I thought that was kind of funny because also, you know, maybe he shouldn't be there if that's how he feels. He doesn't seem like he jives with these people. These are not his people. Get out. Good for you.
Well, some of them are trying to be like, I think we all think that the hoods were a nice idea, but they could have been executed a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, just underscoring the ridiculousness.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that they died too. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I am.
Yeah, in a movie like this, you're not going to
root for
actually
any of them.
Make the director isn't going to actually make the KKK like into a real threat of any kind. It's going like you put them in there to mock and ridicule them, right?
Yes. But I also think that like this just shows like this, again, it's this mom mentality, I think, where was it Big Daddy is like, oh, okay, well, I guess, you know, they had a bounty on them, so that's fine, whatever. And he like bows out. You know, but then he's leading the posse to try to take revenge on them. Yeah,
what you could have done right there, bro. It was at your house.
Yeah. And so it's like you're hiding behind something and it's cowardice as well. So,
yeah. And Django says, look at him run. And King says, cowards tend to do that.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, that's great, just to look at those masks not as a symbol of something you should be afraid of, but okay, you only hide behind a mask because you are a coward. I guess like superheroes do that too, like Batman.
What's the movie? Oh, there's a movie with Sally Field, I think, and
what's the one with the talking car? Sally Field's in that.
No.
Knight Rider?
No.
The Flying Nun, I think, is a Sally Field film.
No, it's and Glover.
Donald Glover? Danny Glover. Lethal Weapon.
No. And they own its plantation, and her husband dies, and she has a blind guy that lives with her. And Danny Glover is like the foreman on the plantation.
Okay.
And the KKK comes for him, and the blind guy comes out while they're like on the front porch, and he starts, because he's blind, right? And he
doesn't know they're wearing hoods. Yeah.
Well, he knows that they're wearing hoods because he can feel it when somebody tries to grab him, but he can identify places in the heart. Thank you, Jeremy. he can identify them by their voices and he starts calling them out. And I don't even remember the whole film. I remember a couple of really important pieces of that, but I remembered that scene and I really appreciated that he called them out because it's that whole, like, you're wearing a mask thing. And like you were comparing it to like Batman and stuff, but I still think like Batman's still trying to fight for a righteous cause, right? And these guys are still, they're being cowards and that kind of thing. So I liked that they were called out. And in that movie, it just reminded me of that scene.
Absolutely. It's always so funny. Like, oh, Jonah Hill is in this just for like these two scenes.
Yes. That was interesting.
I'm confused. Are we doing the hoods or?
I did read something about that they almost didn't put that scene in.
It is a pretty different tone.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
He said, I think what I read, and this will probably butcher it, so I should probably get my facts straight, but I think what I read is they showed just that scene to some people and the response wasn't good. But then when they did the finished film with it and they showed it to a couple people and they felt like seeing it in context made it fit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because you're just not sure. You almost have to test. What's the word I'm looking for? Screen test, right? Something like that. Do you think, this is my next note. My next note is that I think Jamie Foxx might be hot based on this movie. Like when he gets his hair cut, I like that. I like when his hair gets cut and he looks cleaner. Do you think he looks like NBA star Jimmy Butler? Do you see a similarity in their facial structure at all?
Like maybe, I don't know. Now I've got to pull up a picture of Jamie Foxx.
Oh, I was like, you have a picture of Jimmy Butler right there in front of you. Just for the Heat. Used to be on the Bulls, most famously. A couple other teams.
I think if you get the right picture, his cheekbones.
We got a side by side. Yeah. But I don't think Jimmy Butler's hot, but I think Jamie Foxx might be. Is that just because do I just think Django is hot? I don't know.
I think there's a swagger that Jamie Foxx has.
He does have a swagger. He's so good at reading. When he's reading the playbill about the Smearby Call gang, I'm so proud of him.
I love that.
Wow, Kevin Durant does look like Jamie Foxx kind of.
Okay, let me see that
bigger forehead. Jamie Foxx has a bigger forehead.
So you're talking about when he kills the guy that's farming.
Yes.
So what I loved about that scene is the whole, are you positive? And he's like, no. And he's like, you're not positive. And he's like, well, I don't know what that means. And he's like, it
means you're sure.
Sure. And he's like, well, then yes, I'm sure. I really liked that interaction because I felt like Django he was very precise in his words, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't, and it's probably something that's learned, being super precise, because you never know what you're going to get in trouble for.
Right.
So
got to be careful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was very precise in his words and I really appreciated that. And then, but I also appreciate how King chased it down with him. Like like he asked until they got the resolution of, you're sure, you're not sure, you know what this means, you don't know what this means.
He's a great teacher. He's patient. He cares. But he trusts Django as well. Like when he's aiming at Smidwick Hall and he's like, okay, put the gun down. Like we need to talk about why we're doing this and make sure it feels right. Yeah.
And he's like, okay, let's check in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked that too.
Yeah. He's empathetic and he's an international treasure. That's what my note said. So we're up to the point where we meet Leo. Did you know Leo was in this? Like just from, there's memes of him too.
I don't think I've seen any of those from this movie.
Some of the you had my curiosity. Mm-mm. Now you have my attention. I've seen that one. Yeah, there's a couple right in there in the introduction scene. There's a couple of, and him holding the long French cigarette holder thing too.
Everything from that he was in this, everything from him was hard to watch. Like it was super cringy for me.
Cringy in a good way, as in he's doing a good job in that role, or
he was definitely doing a good job in that role because I did not like him at all.
I don't think you're supposed to.
He's no Jack in that role, right?
From the Titanic.
Okay. Throwing it way back there.
I've seen fewer Leonardo DiCaprio movies than you might imagine. I've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Trying to think. What other Leo movies? I've not seen Catch Me If You Can. Right?
Yeah, that's
Leo and
Leo
Tom
movie.
Hanks.
Romeo and Juliet.
No. Is that the one that's like West Side Story? Just it's the same story as Romeo and Juliet, but set in modern times.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I have not seen that. Inception. He's in.
That's
I've
a
seen
really
that.
good one. Love that.
I've not seen Shutter Island.
That one he's good into.
Okay. We'll have to do Leo month.
Yeah.
At some point. I don't know if I've seen any Leo movies that you haven't seen though.
He did a really good job in this and
Yes.
maybe not like him at all.
Rachel said that she has read that he would go into his trailer and just really get into character, like some method acting, and come out and just not talk to, like he would refuse to talk to anyone because he has to have that intense racistness when he gets onto the set to just really let them have it. And some of the stuff that they have him saying
is horrible.
Is so horrible. I had to explain to Rachel, and we watched it with Megan again last night, about when he calls himself a phrenologist, right? With the dimples, the bumps on the skull, like that's the grossest stuff you can say.
Yeah.
Right. You don't ever want to do him the dignity of quoting any of those things. But he seems like he believes it.
Yeah. Which that's the cringiness. Like, because I don't relate.
And I feel that way also with the Sam Jackson scenes, because it's like when Django says, "You want me to be a black slaver?" That's the lowest of the low. Like that's the worst thing you could ask me to portray as a character because it's such a traitorous thing. He's like, that's worse than the head house slave. And that's pretty, he goes, and buddy, that's pretty dang low.
That also like gave me a little bit of anxiety for his character, because I'm like, I do not want him to be, he's acting one way. That's not who he really is.
Yeah.
And like, I was afraid that it was going to come back to bite him in the butt.
Do you feel
on
like
the plantation.
Do you feel like it did?
Did it? No, I don't really think it did. Because I really thought that a couple of those guys that he was getting transported with to the mines were going to like turn around and beat him.
Gotcha.
Like, and they were giving him dirty looks. And so I really thought like under the radar, they were going to do something, and they didn't. So
it's a fine line between selling it. I mean, he wants them to not like him, right? He's playing this black slaver, like he needs to be convincingly.
That's the best chance he has at getting his girl.
And he's willing to do whatever it takes to do that. This is when it shifts from being a movie necessarily about slavery and race relations to being like his pursuit of, you know, his heart's desire.
Yes.
Which I think is interesting.
And I love, just shifting back just a tiny bit, when they're chatting about, first of all, I was happy that King Schultz kept his agreement to go to Greenville or wherever and look up the records to find where Hildy was. Like, I appreciated all that. And I liked when they were talking it through and he's like, we could just go, he's like, you can't just go get her.
Right.
Because you need a bill of sale.
Yeah.
Which is disgusting. But I appreciated how he's like keeping it real.
Yes.
So that they have the best chance of success, which I relate to in a completely non-race way, but like keeping it real so you have the best chance of success for like different things. Like that's important. You can't.
Pragmatism, yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. And that's what I was going to say. I like that he was like, well, let me maybe, what about this idea? Yeah. And he didn't just tell him, this is what you need to do. So I appreciate that because it gave Django like ownership and it kind of elevated their partnership a little bit.
And then even when they figure out, when Sam Jackson and Leo figure out that was their plan, you can hear them, they tell it backwards, right? You wouldn't have paid him no mind if they just came up trying to buy Hildy. You would have said, screw off. So they had to come in looking at the Mandingo fighters and then do Hildy as an add-in. Like they figured out the whole plan, which shows you that, and they were like, I respect, like it was a good plan. Like that's what they had to try to do. And so they were really trying to thread that needle and it was just tough. Hildy was one that kind of screwed them, honestly, low key.
I was so annoyed. I don't know why they even, I guess it's better that they told her up front versus her serving them and being blindsided by him sitting there. But at the same time, I was like, oh, hun, just, you got to lock it up. You cannot have any reactions.
Yeah. And that's just was too hard for her because they really did have a good shot at it because it was plausible. He is a German guy. He wants someone to speak German with. Oh, okay. I'm here. I'll, you know, the Candies would get why he would want to buy her from them. Like that, it would all make sense if you could take some of the just emotional, natural reaction stuff out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Side note, Leo and his sister.
Yeah.
Were you getting a little creepy vibes? Because I was getting creepy vibes.
Yeah. When Megan and Rachel and I were watching it last night and he stands up and goes, "Where is my beautiful sister?" And she's just like, what just happened? Did this movie just did we just drop a little bit of incest in here?
Yeah. It was really kind of creepy.
Yeah. But it's just another one of those little things that they're layering in there, like about the antebellum South that I think is not unrealistic. You weren't like, okay, that's got no place in this movie. You watch it and you're like, I could see that. I mean, it's, you know, those are all the things that we think about, all those classic tropes about those plantation owner type of guys. So yeah, I mean, but it's not cheesy. It's not like, okay, of course they had to put a little bit of incest storyline in here. You're like, yeah, it just kind of flowed with it really making Candyland a 3-dimensional place, right? It wasn't just a place that they went just to do this with Hildy. It was like you got to know the names of the house slaves and things like that in a way that fleshed it out and gave it depth.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good. Very interesting. The hot box. Oh,
that's
just another
horrible.
one of those. I mean, we can just check off like the whipping, the walking in chains, the Mandingo fighting, the hot box, the getting torn apart by dogs. Like
it's not only a physical torture, but it's also they're literally breaking you down mentally.
Absolutely.
And I think it's horrendous.
Yikes. During the scenes, so the dining room, I think there's a few kind of 3 distinct scenes almost that take place in that dining room where that culminate in him almost bashing her head in with the hammer, right? It's kind of the final one. Sold. When they are first being served dinner, I'm almost just as creeped out by the dance that all of these servants are doing, right? As they bring up gravy and then they just, without even breaking eye contact, he'll tap his knife just to show, or they'll beckon people and they're like constantly in motion. And that just has me thinking like, how many hours have they practiced this kind of stuff? This is dinner every night at these guys' house. It makes my stomach crawl. Like that's just power. Like that's all you want is to like put people in a place. It's like you're going to serve me because I can make you serve me. Yeah. And that's disgusting.
You're going to do it how I want you to do it.
Yeah. Or else I'm going to, I mean, the girl was getting whipped at the first plantation for breaking eggs. Yeah. Right. Which is obviously an accident. It's not like she was egging the house or something. It's gross and I hate it. Slavery is still bad.
Do you know what? Maybe we want to cut this. I don't know. But it's even outside of this race and the consequences for viewing this through the lens of race and slavery. Those kinds of actions about control and power and making people do things are still just, people still do that in abusive relationships today.
Oh, yeah.
Just because they can.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we've grown as a society, which obviously we have so much more growing to do and we're not anywhere near where we could be or where we even should be. But it's like that stuff is still happening. Those oppression and power struggles and like in places you don't even realize it's happening like all the time, every day.
Bosses with interns on coffee runs, you know, all the way to... Yeah, like you said, abusive relationships, psychologically manipulative relationships and things like that. Yeah, I think the scale has changed, right? I mean, Calvin Candy has had how many slaves probably over the past 15 years?
Generational, because he's talking about his dad and his dad's dad. And
thousands of slaves have come through Candyland, many of whom have like died there, we're led to believe. I mean, apparently. So... I mean, I think in the aggregate, it is better. I would say it's better. Things are better now that we don't have legalized slavery in the United States. So a controversial take. But yeah, you're absolutely right that the the fundamental roots of what are going on there hasn't been eradicated from society. It's not like that stuff. Those kind of power trips have left us entirely.
Yeah, that's something that is horrible. Obviously,
100%.
it's all horrible, but that's something that really speaks to me and makes me upset.
Do you think Kerry Washington can actually speak German?
I don't know. Did she had very few lines.
She didn't have a ton of lines. She had a few, but not a ton. Not a ton of longer lines.
I don't know. Can we get that on the Google?
I took 3 years of German in high school. Humble brag. I thought her accent was pretty good. I thought her accent was good. She had to learn German for Django. Can you do that in your Kerry Washington voice? Okay, fair enough. That was a test and you passed. Don't do a Kerry Washington voice if you can avoid doing so. I love how bad everyone's teeth are in this movie. It's very period appropriate.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Calvin Candy smiling and just the yellow kind of gross teeth. They really went down to details on a lot of those things. I thought that was good. Okay, so here's a question I have for you. When Christoph Waltz kills Leo,
I was cheering.
You were cheering.
Yeah.
Good. That's good. As you should be.
And you knew that was coming because of the spring gun.
Mm-hmm. They'd seeded that a couple of times. They'd done it a few times to that point already. When he does that, and then there's that ensuing kind of shootout, he dies, everybody dies except Django and Samuel Jackson, pretty much. And it just keeps coming. More men keep coming to the house. Which makes me remember that he had sent his sister out on some kind of pretext to leave the house, right, to go and get those guys. So, was he planning on ever actually letting them leave?
I think he was.
Really?
I do.
If he had shaken his hand, he would have let him leave?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Because I think I think going to get the extra guys was insurance, right? In case they needed it.
And they were just going to line the road while they walked down, or?
Yeah, or they were just there to just be there in case they needed it because he got the money. He wants money. Money is more important than he called their whole con, right? Mm-hmm. So he gets to be the bigger man. But then when he can tell that King is still, because I think he was given off pretty, I'm disgusted with this whole situation vibes.
Yes,
for sure.
Stopping her playing Beethoven, talking about Three Musketeers. Yeah.
Which was super great.
Yeah.
Love that. And that was his way of sticking it back to Candy, right?
Right.
And then he got mad because here's this guy still thinking that he is, morally above
which
him.
He is.
Agreed. And I think that's what clinched it for him. That's what made him push for the handshake. Mm-hmm. And then King couldn't back down from that because he's like, you're just ridiculously disgusting. And he shot him and then bam, it ensued. Yeah. So I think if he would have shook his hand, I think they would have had a better chance of getting out. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm okay that he didn't.
Right. Here's my counterpoint. Why let them leave?
Because he could have killed them and
taken the money in his wallet, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that they had a lot of leverage. It's not like any lawmen would have been on their side. They didn't have allies that knew they were there. They walked all the way into the lion's den. I don't know. I just thought about that this last time upon rewatching it. Was like, oh, they had a bunch of people ready to go up at this house.
Well, it's like the same idea when Big Daddy lets him go. Mm-hmm. He didn't have to let him go.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So to me, I'm just thinking it's like the same logic. He would have let him go, but then because he got shot, they all came in.
That's an interesting parallel. That's true. So we haven't talked a lot about the dining room scenes. I know we're going to start running long here. It's a long movie, Jeremy.
It is
Don't look at me like
movie.
that.
It's
a really long movie. I'm gaslighting you into eventually agreeing to watch the Lord of the Rings extended editions with me. Oh, those are such good movies, though. You're wrong. It's a long movie. When they're in the dining room, do we have anything else that needs to be said about those scenes with the screaming? Once he's realized right? Black Hercules, the phrenology, when he takes the hacksaw and slices into that skull of old Ben, somehow one of the most menacing things that you'll see on film.
Yeah, I was not a fan of that. I wasn't a fan of the whole thing.
I just kept being like, this is bad. These are bad guys.
Yeah.
They're evil.
And like Django's got his hand on his gun.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're trying to strip Hildy's back down,
Mm-hmm.
which was purely made to humiliate. Actually, I don't even think they were literally trying to humiliate her. They were giving no consideration to her as a person
She's not
at
a
all.
human. Yeah.
So you can't humiliate her.
She's property. How many times does he say we're in Chickasaw, under the laws of Chickasaw County, that she is my property?
Yeah. So that made me anxious too, because I thought he's going to shoot somebody up and then they're all going to die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The tension. Okay. Finally, it's Jeremy with a random noise in the middle of the podcast after all the times we get yelled at. I think Tarantino does a great job of building the tension. You're getting more and more flashbacks as they get to Candyland, and the tension just stays high for an uncomfortable length of time. Other than when they're speaking German to each other in the bedroom. Even then, you're like, she's going to scream, she's going to faint, this glass is going to break, someone's going to know.
Outside the door.
Because which he says, we're only speaking German in case there's someone standing right outside there. You're never allowed to relax. It's like a stress headache. Like, it's just tension. Up until what? Up until when? I mean, I guess there's some release when they start shooting the first time. But then Django gets cornered again. I forgot about the whole, I mean, when you're thinking about this movie, you're thinking about them in the dining room and the Leo stuff. And I forgot that they go to the whole mining company thing and he does all of that, kills those guys immediately.
So funny.
It was funny. Yes, it was funny.
Yeah. And then he goes back and there's this random person. First of all, he goes back and he finds King's body, which I thought was weird, like just there. And by chance, the bill of sale and the money that King had, it's all right there.
Nice.
So crazy.
Convenient.
Also crazy that he had they set that up before. Always keep your first whatever of this.
Lucky.
The gang.
Playbill, yeah.
Yeah.
Playbill.
Which was interesting.
It's not playbill. First. Oh, this is a real. Shoot, the poster, the wanted poster.
But I don't remember what they called it.
Me neither. Dang.
So I'm glad that they found it, right? Because that's her sign of freedom.
Right.
And so he has his, I'm assuming he has his, and she's got hers. And so they are definitely free as long as they can get to a place and keep that and prove it, right? But who knows, like they could get shot down the road. But that's in the next movie, Anyways.
Django 2, Unchained her.
Yeah. So there's the scene where there's a bunch of the people in the cabin when he comes back.
One's painting a birdhouse.
Yes. And one's in a bath. But there's one character who has a scarf over their face. And I was like, what's up with that? And we don't hear anything about it. We saw it earlier in the movie and we see it then. Yeah. And then he shoots them all up, which good, go for it.
Rachel thinks it's a woman.
I thought it was a woman too.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's something it has to be a nod to something because I feel like that costume is very familiar, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Like a Kissing Kate Barlow, something specific. Yeah.
Yeah. Very familiar. So loved that.
Yeah. I was wondering if you felt like it's a long movie. Does it drag?
Yes.
It drags.
Yes.
Well, I don't feel like it drags.
I literally said that to Jeremy. I'm like, is this slow? Is it just me or is this slow?
Really? Yeah. What parts?
I don't even remember specifically, but I just remember feeling like it was dragging. I think after they kill the guy. After they
kill the guy. Remember when they killed the guy?
After they kill the farmer. The Smitty Bacall.
And they're doing a little bit of montage about, look, Django's becoming a good bounty hunter and he's good at shooting.
Which we need that.
Yeah.
But then, I don't know. I just feel like they put a lot of time in certain areas that I didn't really need them to put time into.
The only thing for me is from when they meet Leo. There's the Mandingo scene stuff drag a little bit, but that just might be because I'm so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then the walk to Candyland, that takes a minute.
Yeah, like we needed that extra walking time and we couldn't put a montage of him trying on different costumes. I'm just saying.
I didn't say we couldn't put it in there. Yeah, that would have been fine.
I didn't need any extra confirmation that Leo's a bad guy in this film. You know what I mean? So I didn't need the extra time to prove that.
Yeah.
But that's not how the guy rolls, right? It's a Quentin Tarantino movie. He wants to show like all the bloody, gory stuff.
He really built it up. Yeah. I mean, I think I wonder if that was all needed. Like we were saying, the tension being so high, if you needed to do all of that to keep it that way. I don't know. Obviously, you can't say, we can't go back and cut it down and watch again for the first time, but the ending is good. It's not the climax. The climax for me is when Christoph Waltz dies and he shoots Candy. When he and Leo both die, that's the climax for me, and it's falling action from there on. It's not the number one biggest, like the heart moment when he actually kills Sam Jackson. I mean, that stuff's good, but
I appreciated Sam Jackson's little speech about how they were trying to figure out what to do with Django.
Yeah.
And he's like, I kept mentioning it. And then, whoa, she had a big idea.
Yeah. White people never had an original idea. Yeah.
I appreciated that.
Most of them come from messing with your fun bits.
I also appreciated at the end when he's on the stairwell and he says, Kara or whatever the chick's name is. He's like, say goodbye to
goodbye, Miss Laura.
Yeah. Yes. And he shoots her at an angle and yet she flies straight back
10 feet backwards, like up off the ground. Yeah.
Like she was just literally in a belt or on wires, right? And they just jerked, which I thought was really funny.
That's what she deserved.
Yeah. And I'm glad that they killed Samuel L. Jackson too, because he deserved that as well. And then
you black folks get going, but not you, Steven.
Yeah. And then the grand finale of just blowing up the entire place.
While Sam Jackson's going, you can't destroy. There's always been a Candyland. There's always going to be a Candyland. And then like as he's destroying it. Yeah.
Because if you think about that, that means there are no heirs because both the brother and the sister have died. And to our knowledge, there are no children.
Right.
But even if there is, the whole place is torched. So it's not like they're coming back to anything really to continue building this and perpetuating this cycle.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they probably have money in a bank somewhere, but that'd be about it. Yeah. I think they do a really good job of taking Candyland from this big formidable fortress with so many resources. When you first get there, there's, dozens, if not hundreds of people walking around, and they have their regiments. And on top of everything, it's a cotton plantation too. We never even see that, right? That's what's making the money. It goes from that to when the funeral group gets back in and there's still blood on the walls and it's just this empty shell of a house that he then blows up. Like you really see the fall of the House of Usher sort of situation, which I think is neat.
I like that. And then my only concern at the end is, right, he gets Hildy, love that. And then I'm just like, I want them to get to someplace safe where they can't be hurt again.
It is important to me that I see these characters in the North. I see a sign that says Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, because I don't know. They could have killed him with King at any time, but I don't know without King being there to help balance it if he can still do the bounty hunting thing and not get
caught up in whatever. Yeah.
Not get some kind of, I'm doing little air quotes, consequences.
Yeah. Yeah, it is not a film that wraps everything up neatly in a bow. King dies. Presumably Fritz. We you lose Fritz, some of those characters you had from the beginning, right? In a Disney-fied version of it, right? All the good guys survive and only all the bad guys die, right? They do have whip marks on their back and R's on their faces, and you don't know what's going to happen to them, but you don't want to sugarcoat what life would have been like for those humans in that time period, right? Not that it's the whole story necessarily is realistic per se, but they're trying to ground it, I guess, and I appreciate that. So Django Unchained, Quentin Tarantino, 2012, starring Jamie Foxx. Did you like it?
I liked it. I will not watch it again.
Wow. Okay.
But it is a talking point. So if anybody asks, have you seen it? I can be like, yeah, man, that tooth on top of the wagon, that's crazy.
It's going to be 10 years from now. You're going to remember the tooth.
I probably am because I told Jeremy when we were watching, I'm like, I have seen a lot of Westerns and I've never seen that. So listeners, if you've seen a tooth on top of wagon in another Western, please call in and let us know.
Flab back at us at 1-800-FLAB. Flab line. Flab mail. Flab gab. Fantastic. I liked it. I watched it twice in the span. I watched it on Sunday and then again the next Sunday. I will watch it again. It is one of my favorite films. I almost think that it should be required viewing for racist people or people that I'm worried are going to be racist. Like, I'm not saying any mom in particular, but like, you know, the people in our generation's moms and dads who watch Fox News, stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I think it's really good.
I don't know. That's a social experiment right there, right?
Yeah.
If you watch it and because we were talking about how completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, will it open anybody else's eyes to how completely ridiculous that is or not? I
mean, I guess there are good people that are going to be like, yep, absolutely. Slavery was bad. But that was a long time ago and it's all over now. And I didn't have slaves. So, you know.
I did read an article that talks about how many times they use the N-word.
Yeah.
Which is like 110 or something, I think.
It's a lot.
And they're like, we get it for the time.
Yeah.
It's accurate. But did we really need it that many times?
I'm fine with punches not being pulled. Oh, I'm sorry, it makes you uncomfortable? Yeah, freaking, it was uncomfortable and it was bad.
But in that same token, I'm like, I really didn't need to see a guy being bitten apart by dogs.
Yeah.
So
did you?
That would be.
Did you not need to see it? Or is that what you needed to see? Did you need to see that?
I mean, I would have felt the same way if they just killed him.
Yeah.
Because to me, it wasn't the whole act of how horribly he was killed. To me, what hit me about that scene was that he was emotionally wrought from having to kill somebody else.
3 times, yeah.
Yeah. And at that point,
how far is too far? How much is enough?
He should have just kept running, right?
Yeah, I mean, they said that he had a limp, right? He had a gimp leg or something like that. A gimpy leg.
Yeah.
Not a gimp leg, that might be a whole different thing.
Controversial for sure.
It's hard to know how much is too far. Like, you know, he's driving a point home and he's driving it probably farther than strictly has to be done for you to understand. Okay, yes, I understand what you're saying about this atrocities of slavery in that time period and the class structure and stuff. I'm good. I get it. But you take out any one of those pieces of the Jenga puzzle and is it quite as effective? I don't know. That's why I'm not a famous director, right?
Touché.
I don't mind it. Just because I try to be really empathetic too. I practice empathy, Jess. I don't know if you're familiar. I try to not take anything away. Look, if this was all that bad, then like you guys have the right to every frustration that you come at me or us as a society with, and I'm never going to be like, no, it actually was, Sometimes I think people are dumb and I'm dumb and I need to be hit as hard as possible over the head with that kind of stuff.
Okay. I hear that. I can see how
You're more enlightened. Not that like I'm accidentally racist like some days. It's not what I'm saying, but.
No, but sometimes it keeps you grounded.
Yeah.
To see it, even though, yeah, I can see that. Mm-hmm. Not you as in you, Rogge, but you as in.
Right. Society
the royal
and stuff.
You.
Yeah. And I think at that point, you're veering away from this being an entertainment product and into it being a moral statement, which I think is fine. I mean, I think it's the director's prerogative to do that.
Yeah, because it's art, right?
Yeah.
And it's up to them how they want to put it out into the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you know that was Tarantino in the mining scene?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved that, by the way, when, I'm going to butcher the scene, but I loved how he's like, I'm not riding with dynamite. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And he got the other guy to do it and then blew him up. And then he's like, give me the dynamite.
Yeah, and then he rides away with in one hand and a rifle in another hand, no saddle on the horse. It's like, Django, I'm so proud of you. You've come such a long way.
And I do love and appreciate that he had never ridden a horse. And he's like, get up on the horse in the beginning of the movie. And at the end, like you said,
so good at it.
Yeah.
He's doing the dancing, the horse dancing stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Love Django. Love Django Unchained. Love Jamie Foxx. Love Flabbergasted. We're going to do more movies coming down the pipeline. This was one of our 2 Sam Jackson films. So be on the lookout for the next one or the last one, depending on what order these came out in. Thank you for listening. Goodbye, guys.
Bye.